She thought she had lost everything: her home, her job, her hope. But when life pushed her to the edge, one mother's fight to survive in America shows us what true strength really means. If you want to hear stories that matter and inspire, hit that subscribe button and join us now. The plastic grocery bag dangled from Tasha's hand, heavy with canned ravioli and a small carton of milk she hoped wouldn't spoil overnight. Jaden, her 2.5-year-old son, bounced beside her, dragging a worn plush tiger by its tail. His coat was slightly too small, and the chill of the evening wind made him sniffle. "Almost home, baby," Tasha murmured, forcing a smile. But when she turned the corner and approached her apartment building, she froze. Something was taped to her front door, a glaring white sheet fluttering in the wind. Her stomach dropped. Jaden tugged on her coat. "Mommy, why stop?" She didn't answer. Her heart beat wildly as she stepped forward. The paper was large and bold, impossible to miss. "Eviction notice, final warning." The words hit like a punch. She read them again, hoping she'd misread, but no, it was real. The notice was dated that morning. She had 5 days to vacate, but knowing her landlord, it could happen even sooner. He wasn't above showing up with a locksmith and a smile. Tasha's throat went dry. She turned the key in the lock with shaking fingers and pushed the door open. The apartment was dim, the light bulb flickering like it was tired of trying. The air was cold, gas bill unpaid again. Jaden ran to the couch, oblivious, and climbed up with his tiger, humming to himself. Tasha sank down onto the edge of her bed, hands trembling. She pulled the eviction notice from her coat pocket and stared at it again. She'd tried so hard to keep things going. Ever since Jaden was born, every day had been a fight: to eat, to work, to pay rent, to smile when there was nothing left to smile about. She'd been juggling 2 part-time jobs until 3 weeks ago when the diner let her go without warning. Business was slow, they said. They wished her the best. Her second job, cleaning an office at night, barely paid for diapers and transit. And now this. She wanted to scream, but Jaden laughed from the couch, kicking his feet. She couldn't let him see her break. Tasha stood and began packing without thinking. Trash bags. That's all she had to carry their life. She started with Jaden's things: his spare clothes, his shoes with the broken Velcro, the baby lotion he still liked because of the smell. She gently placed the tiger on top. Her own belongings? A few shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, her work shoes, and the hoodie her mother had given her before they stopped speaking. By the time she finished, it was dark. Jaden had fallen asleep curled up with his toy, mouth slightly open, one hand resting on the bag she'd packed for him. Tasha watched him, her heart aching. She hadn't wanted this life. She hadn't wanted to raise a child alone. But she had. And despite everything, no support, no father in the picture, no savings, she'd done her best. Still, it wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed. A message from Metro Alert: cold weather warning. Temps below freezing overnight. She stared at the screen, then out the window. Where could they go? Shelters were full. Her old friend Simone had 4 kids already in a 1-bedroom. Her cousin had blocked her after she borrowed $40 she couldn't repay. The church might help, but it was late now. She sat down beside Jaden and gently shook him awake. "Come on, baby. We're going on an adventure." "Adventure," he mumbled, eyes barely open. "Yeah, just you and me." She wrapped him in 2 sweaters and a blanket, pulled on her coat, and slung 1 trash bag over each shoulder. With Jaden on her hip and his tiger clutched in his hand, she stepped outside and locked the door for the last time. They walked through the cold night air toward the bus stop. Her hands were freezing. She didn't have a plan, just a gut instinct to keep moving. To not be caught standing still when the world was ready to shove her down again. The bus driver didn't charge her. Maybe he saw something in her eyes. Maybe he had a kid of his own. Tasha muttered a thank you and sat in the back, rocking Jaden gently as he drifted back to sleep. As the city lights passed outside the window, she felt invisible. People talked about homelessness like it was a character flaw. Lazy, irresponsible, addict. But no one saw mothers like her. Tired, working, broken mothers with babies in their arms and nowhere to go. Tasha closed her eyes. She would figure it out. She had to. The bus rocked gently as it rolled through downtown. Streetlights flickered overhead like tired stars, casting shadows through fogged windows. Tasha held Jaden close to her chest, his breath warm against her collarbone. He was still asleep, unaware of how far from home they now were. She stared out at the city, towering buildings lit with soft blue lights, restaurants with glowing windows, people walking quickly with purpose. No one looked like her. No one looked cold or lost. The bus hissed to a stop. End of the line, the driver said, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Tasha stood up slowly, her back aching, and adjusted Jaden's weight on her hip. The trash bags dragged on the pavement as she stepped off the bus. Cold air slapped her face. She was somewhere in the heart of downtown. Office buildings loomed above. Across the street, a fast food place blinked, open 24 hours, in red neon. She crossed over and stepped inside, grateful for the warmth. The cashier gave her a quick look but didn't say anything. She ordered the cheapest item on the menu, a small coffee. Her hands trembled as she held the cup, sipping slowly to make it last. She sat in a corner booth with Jaden still sleeping beside her, wrapped in the blanket. What now? Her mind raced. Shelters were full this time of year, especially for women with kids. She tried calling around weeks ago, just in case. Every line ended in "try again tomorrow," or worse, "we're not accepting new intakes." She could try again in the morning, but that didn't solve tonight. She opened her phone. Battery, 12%. She didn't have a charger. Didn't have much of anything. Scrolling through her contacts, she paused on one name, Nia. They hadn't spoken in a year. They used to work together at the diner. Nia was the closest thing Tasha had to a friend back then. But after Tasha had to cancel babysitting last minute and Nia got written up for being late, things went cold. She hesitated, then hit call. No answer. Straight to voicemail. Tasha closed her eyes and let her head fall against the booth wall. She felt the weight of it all, years of doing it alone, never catching a break. One step forward, two back. Always trying. Always failing. Jaden stirred, then sat up slowly. Mommy, where's my bed? Tasha forced a smile. We're camping tonight, baby. In McDonald's? Yeah, she said. It's a special one. He looked around. Can we have pancakes? She reached into her coat pocket and counted the last few coins she had. Not enough. Tomorrow, okay? She whispered, kissing his forehead. Jaden nodded, curling into her side. He was always like this, soft, forgiving, trusting. She hated how much he trusted her to fix everything when she didn't know how. A janitor mopped the floor nearby. The place was mostly empty except for a college student with headphones and an elderly man muttering to himself. Tasha knew they couldn't stay here long. Eventually, a manager would come over and ask her to leave. That's how it always went. Her eyes scanned the booths, the walls, the cold tile floor. She remembered hearing about a women's day center a few blocks from here. They helped with housing sometimes, offered breakfast, a place to shower. But they didn't open until 8 a.m. That was 8 hours from now. She stood up and gathered their things. Come on, sweetheart, she said, lifting Jaden. Where we go now? For a walk. He was too tired to question it. They wandered through the city's empty sidewalks, the sound of Jaden's soft voice humming keeping her sane. She passed locked doors, gated storefronts, benches too cold to sit on. Around 3 a.m., she found a covered parking garage and slipped into the corner behind a large concrete pillar. It blocked the wind, mostly. She laid down the blanket and sat with Jaden in her lap. She wrapped her coat around them both. Is this our new house? He asked sleepily. Just for tonight. He nodded and closed his eyes again. Tasha looked out into the street. Cars passed like ghosts. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping in warm beds, making plans for tomorrow, feeling safe. She didn't resent them, but she couldn't help but wonder what made their lives so different. What was the exact moment her path had diverged from theirs? Was it the day she missed that job interview because Jaden had a fever? Was it when her mom kicked her out when she was pregnant? Or was it long before that? Something passed down, something she never had a chance to fight? At sunrise, her phone buzzed. 1 bar of battery left. It was a message. Nia, you okay? Tasha stared at it. Then, with shaking fingers, she typed back. No. Tasha hadn't expected Nia to reply again. She stared at the tiny text bubble on the cracked screen of her phone. A pause. Then 3 dots appeared. Nia, where are you? Tasha looked up from the parking garage floor. The street was just starting to stir. Morning runners in sleek gear, trash trucks rumbling past, people in office clothes hurrying with coffee cups. She was invisible to them. Just another shadow in the city. She typed slowly. Downtown. Parking garage near 6th. With Jaden. Less than a minute later, Nia replied. Stay there. I'm coming. Tasha's fingers trembled. She set the phone down on her lap and exhaled. Jaden was still asleep, his tiny hand gripping a corner of her coat. She brushed a curl off his forehead and looked out into the rising sun. For the first time in hours, the light didn't feel so cruel. She didn't know if Nia would actually come. Maybe it was a courtesy text, a guilt-driven promise. But she clung to it anyway. 35 minutes later, a car pulled up near the garage entrance. Tasha didn't recognize it at first, but when the driver's window rolled down, she saw her. Nia, still wearing her red scrubs from the nursing home job she'd landed last year. "Tasha," she called. Tasha stood, gathering their things. Her knees ached, her back stiff. She lifted Jaden gently. When she approached the car, Nia got out and opened the passenger door. Her face was a mix of shock and concern. "Girl, what happened?" Tasha's voice cracked. "Eviction notice. Yesterday." Nia looked down at the plastic bags, the dirty blanket, Jaden curled tight against her. "You should have called me. I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. After what happened." Nia shook her head and put a hand on Tasha's shoulder. "That was over a year ago. It's whatever. Come on, get in. I got a couch." Tasha hesitated only a second before climbing in. The warmth of the car wrapped around her. She sank into the seat and tried not to cry. Nia's apartment was small but clean. She lived on the second floor of a brick building in a neighborhood that felt safe, or at least safer than where Tasha had been. Jaden ran straight to the couch, giggling. He found an old stuffed dog under one of the cushions and hugged it like treasure. "You hungry?" Nia asked, already in the kitchen. Tasha nodded, suddenly shy in the comfort of a real home. Nia fixed a plate of eggs and toast for them both and poured orange juice into mismatched mugs. They ate at the small kitchen table while Jaden babbled about the parking cave and how he dreamed of flying trucks. "You don't gotta say it," Nia said after a moment of quiet. "This country's got a way of kicking you down and then blaming you for falling." Tasha looked at her, startled. "Yeah, that's exactly how it feels. You're not lazy. You're not a bad mom. You just didn't have help." Tasha swallowed a lump in her throat. "I'm tired, Nia. I've been tired for years." "I know." They sat in silence, the kind that only old friends can share, full of things unsaid but understood. Later that afternoon, Tasha sat in the living room with Jaden napping beside her. She flipped through her phone, looking for shelters again, maybe job listings. Anything. Her battery was low again, but she caught a post from a local nonprofit, Women's Drop-In Center, offering emergency housing assessments. First come, first served. ID required. She didn't have her ID. It was still in the apartment, probably thrown out by now. She sighed. Nia walked in and handed her a charger. "You can use my address if you need a mailing address. And I got a cousin at the DMV. Might be able to help you get your ID back without all the red tape." Tasha blinked. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because someone did it for me once. And because I know what it's like to be one missed paycheck away from sleeping in your car. We all pretend we're okay until we're not." Tasha nodded slowly. "You're the first person who's said that." Nia leaned on the doorframe. "You ain't alone, Tasha. That's what they want us to believe. That it's our fault, that we're weak. But we're not. We're survivors." That evening, Tasha helped clean the kitchen. Jaden was playing with measuring cups and calling them spaceships. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and soap. For the first time in what felt like years, Tasha didn't feel like she was holding her breath. Later, as Jaden fell asleep curled up with the stuffed dog, Tasha sat on the balcony, looking out over the street. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from a shelter rep she'd emailed weeks ago. One opening just came up in a transitional housing program. Call ASAP if interested. Tasha stared at the message. She wanted to cry. Instead, she went inside, grabbed her phone charger, and plugged it in. Tomorrow, she'd call. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, warm and soft. Tasha opened her eyes slowly, confused by the calm. For a split second, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw Jaden, curled beside her on the couch, his tiny fists tucked beneath his cheek, breathing evenly. Right. Nia's place. The panic she'd gotten used to waking with. The panic of, where are we going to go today? Wasn't there. Not yet, at least. She tiptoed into the kitchen. Nia was already up, dressed in her scrubs, sipping coffee. "You sleep okay?" she asked. Tasha nodded, rubbing her eyes. "More than I have in days. I got work in an hour, but you're good here. Fridge is yours, Wi-Fi passwords on the fridge. Take your time." Tasha hesitated. Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden. Nia looked at her firmly. You're not. That baby's not. You're just in a storm right now. But storms pass. Tasha bit her lip and nodded. The tears were right there, as usual. Nia handed her a list. Some places you can call today. One of them is that housing program you texted me about last night. They work fast if you catch them early. Tasha glanced at the paper, the names of organizations scribbled in blue ink. It felt like more than a list. It felt like a lifeline. Later that morning, after feeding Jaden and brushing out his curls, she sat down with her phone and started making calls. The first number went straight to voicemail. The second told her the wait list was full. The third rang. Good morning, Women's Housing Collective. This is Angela. Tasha hesitated. Hi. I saw your post online. About transitional housing. I have a 2-year-old, and we're currently unhoused. Angela's voice was calm. Okay. Can I get your name and contact number? We'll do a quick pre-screen. Tasha gave her the information. They went through questions. Income, current situation, where she'd slept the last few nights. It was hard to admit, out loud, that she'd slept in a parking garage. Angela paused. We do have one space left in our mothers and children transitional home. It's not permanent, but it's stable, 6-month program, with case management and childcare help. Tasha's breath caught. Are you serious? Yes. Can you come in for an in-person intake today? I don't have my ID. Bring what you have. If Nia can vouch for your identity, we can work around that for now. We know it's hard to keep documents when you're on the streets. Tasha clutched the phone. I can be there by noon. Angela gave her the address, then added gently. You're doing the right thing, Tasha. Just come. Nia called during her lunch break. You got this, she said. I can even meet you there if you need backup. Tasha smiled faintly. No, I think I can do this. It felt like the first decision she'd made for herself in a long time. She packed their things, just the basics. Diapers, a change of clothes, the blanket. Nia handed her $20 for bus fare and snacks. Jaden waved goodbye from her arms as they left the apartment. As the bus rattled through downtown, Tasha looked out at the city. It was still cold, still chaotic. People still walked fast and didn't make eye contact. But today, she wasn't lost in it. She had somewhere to go. The building was an old brownstone near the edge of the city, clean, quiet, with a mural of children holding hands painted on the side. Inside, it smelled like oatmeal and Lysol. A tired-looking but kind woman met her in the lobby. You must be Tasha, she said. I'm Angela. Tasha nodded nervously, holding Jaden close. Angela led her into a small office and offered her a seat. The intake was long. Questions, paperwork, forms. Jaden played on the floor with a donated toy car. Every few minutes, Angela would smile and reassure her, You're doing great. Take your time. By the end, Tasha had answered more questions than she could count, but she didn't mind. For once, it felt like someone actually wanted to understand. Angela handed her a key. Room 3B. You'll be sharing the floor with 2 other moms and their kids. There's a kitchen and laundry room, and you'll be assigned a caseworker this week. Tasha stared at the key, stunned. We'll help you apply for ID replacement, food stamps, job referrals, one step at a time. Tasha finally asked, Why do you do this? Angela looked at her with soft eyes. Because no woman should have to raise a child in a parking lot. And because I was in your shoes once. Tasha's throat tightened. Thank you. I don't even know how to. You don't have to say anything. Just stay strong. That's thanks enough. The room was small but warm. Twin bed, dresser, nightstand. A crib against the wall. Tasha laid Jaden down for his nap and sat on the bed. The mattress dipped beneath her weight. She ran a hand over the blanket. Clean, soft, real. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. Not from pain, from relief. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or the next week. But for the first time in months, she had a roof. A door that locked. A place where no one could throw them out. Jaden stirred, turning over and whispering, Mama? She leaned down and kissed his forehead. I'm right here, baby. And this time, she meant it. Tasha adjusted to life in the shelter slowly, like stepping into warm water after weeks of cold. The staff was kind, but strict in their routines. Meals were served on schedule, curfew was non-negotiable, and every resident was expected to meet weekly with a caseworker. Her caseworker, Simone, was a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s with locks pulled back in a bun and an air of no-nonsense warmth. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Let's talk goals, Simone said on their first day. What do you want, Tasha? Not just for today, for the long run. Tasha hesitated. I want a job, a place of our own. I want my son to be safe. Simone nodded. All right. That means we're starting with the basics. ID replacement, public benefits, then resume building. Sound good? It sounded like a mountain. But Tasha nodded anyway. In the following weeks, each step felt like a victory. The shelter helped her submit forms for a new social security card and birth certificate. A local church held a clothing drive, and she picked out 2 pairs of slacks and a blouse that didn't sag or carry stains. She enrolled in a free job readiness program and started learning how to talk about her employment gaps without shame. Even Jaden began to thrive. He was assigned a spot in the shelter's on-site daycare. The first few days, he clung to her leg, eyes wide. But by the end of the week, he was giggling with other toddlers, waving at her as she dropped him off. Tasha watched him through the daycare window one morning and felt something she hadn't let herself feel in months: pride. But stability, even temporary, has a way of letting old fears back in. One night, Tasha was washing dishes in the communal kitchen when she overheard 2 of the other moms talking in hushed tones at the table. They said the funding might not last past fall. You serious? I heard one of the staff say it. We might all have to move again. Tasha froze, soap suds clinging to her hands. It was June. Fall wasn't far. The shelter was a gift, but it was also a countdown. A reminder that time was never on her side. She dried her hands and slipped out without a word. At her next meeting with Simone, she brought it up. I heard the funding might be ending. Simone didn't flinch. It's possible. We're always writing grants, pushing city council to keep us afloat. But I won't lie to you. This place isn't permanent. Tasha looked down. So what happens to us? That's why we work now. So by the time the funding runs out, you're not just stable, you're moving forward. We get you into transitional housing or rapid rehousing. You won't be back on the street, Tasha. Not if we do this right. Her voice was steady, believable. Tasha wanted to believe, too. Later that week, she had her first job interview. It was a part-time position at a grocery store across town, stocking shelves and running registers. Not glamorous, but steady. She borrowed a pair of flats from the community closet, pinned her hair back, and sat on a plastic chair outside the manager's office with her hands clenched in her lap. When they called her in, she smiled through the nerves. The manager, a kind-faced woman named Elena, read through her resume and asked about the gap in employment. I had my son, Tasha said quietly. And then, life got complicated. But I'm ready to work. I need this. Elena looked at her a long time before nodding. I started here after leaving a shelter myself. You're hired. Tasha blinked. Really? Part-time to start. 3 shifts a week. We'll see how it goes. Tasha stepped outside the store into the summer air and cried behind the bus stop bench. But this time, they were tears of joy. The first paycheck wasn't much, but it felt like a lottery win. She bought fresh fruit for Jaden, a new toothbrush, a notebook to start writing things down, plans, thoughts, maybe dreams, if she dared. One evening, Nia video called her. Look at you, Nia said, grinning. Got that employee glow. Tasha laughed. I'm exhausted. But yeah, it feels good. They talked for an hour. Nia updated her on work, her family, even sent a few dollars for Jaden's birthday next month. You're doing amazing, Nia said at the end. Don't let anyone tell you different. Tasha clutched the phone after they hung up. That kind of support, steady, real, meant more than she could ever say. But even progress doesn't erase struggle. Some nights, she lay awake listening to another child scream down the hall. A few mothers relapsed and were asked to leave. One was taken away in handcuffs after an altercation in the lobby. The shelter was safe, but fragile, like a house of cards standing tall until the wrong gust came. And Tasha still had moments, while folding laundry or riding the bus home, when she'd feel that old dread pressing against her ribs. But she kept moving, one shift at a time, one diaper change, one late-night phone call to Simone when the anxiety got too loud. Each morning she woke up, she reminded herself, you're not back there. You're here now. And that had to mean something. August arrived with thick, sticky heat and a growing urgency in Tasha's chest. Though her job brought some structure and pride, the shelter remained a reminder that everything could still fall apart. She came back from a morning shift to find Jaden curled on his cot in the playroom, his cheeks flushed and warm. The daycare volunteer touched his forehead gently and gave Tasha a tired smile. He's got a slight fever, the woman said. Could be a virus. You might want to keep him close for a day or two. Tasha nodded, trying not to show the panic rising in her. She had a shift tomorrow, and no one else to watch him. That night, Jaden lay in her lap, whimpering in his sleep. Tasha dabbed his forehead with a damp cloth, whispering soft reassurances. She'd never felt so helpless and angry at the same time. This child hadn't asked to be born into struggle, into a world that barely looked his way. And now, he was sick in a place where privacy was a curtain and quiet was a rare luxury. She didn't sleep that night, just held him and stared at the ceiling, wondering if anything she did was enough. The next morning, she called her manager and explained the situation. To her surprise, Elena didn't scold her. Don't worry about today, she said. Take care of your boy. Just check in tomorrow. Tasha hung up, stunned. It was a small grace, but in her world, small graces were rare and holy. She spooned soup into Jaden's mouth while he sat limp against her shoulder. A woman across the hall lent her children's Tylenol. That afternoon, Jaden's fever finally broke. Tasha exhaled, her whole body sagging with relief. The next few days blurred into routine again. Bus rides, diaper changes, night cries, work shifts. Tasha was learning to balance. Simone noticed it too. During their weekly meeting, she smiled and nodded through Tasha's update. You're doing good, Simone said. And I've got news. Your name came up for rapid rehousing. Tasha's heart stuttered. What does that mean? It's a rental assistance program. We'd pay a portion of your rent for up to a year while you stabilize. You'd have your own apartment, real walls, a real kitchen. Interested? Tasha stared at her. Is that even a question? Simone grinned. Didn't think so. I'll start the paperwork. 2 weeks later, Tasha toured the apartment. It was small, a one-bedroom in a low-rise complex near a community center. The carpets were worn, and the stove clicked when it lit, but it had clean running water and a door that locked. Jaden waddled across the floor and squealed at the echo of his own voice. Tasha bit her lip. It wasn't perfect. It was everything. I'll take it, she whispered. Moving out of the shelter was bittersweet. She hugged Simone long and hard, promising to stay in touch. Jaden waved at the daycare volunteers. Some of the other women clapped as she packed her trash bags full of donated clothes and hand-me-down toys. You give us hope, one of them said. Tasha couldn't stop the tears. She never thought she'd be the one someone else looked up to. The first night in the apartment felt unreal. She laid a blanket on the floor and put Jaden to sleep beside her. Then she sat against the wall in silence, listening to the hum of the fridge and the soft breath of her son. No crying neighbors. No shouting. No curfew. Just quiet. And the beginning of something that might finally last. The days that followed were full of small triumphs. Tasha signed Jaden up for daycare through the community center. She got approved for food assistance. Elena offered her an extra shift on weekends. She budgeted carefully, buying what she needed and saving what little she could. Sometimes, when Jaden napped, she opened her notebook and wrote down dreams. Not just for survival, but for the future. A GED, maybe nursing school one day. Something stable. Something hers. But not every day was good. Rent was high, even with assistance. Groceries stretched thin. She had no safety net. No family to call. No one to step in if Jaden got sick again or she missed work. And some nights, loneliness wrapped around her like a second skin. Still, she pressed on. Because now she had a door she could close behind her. Because now Jaden had a corner to call his own. Because now, even when the world was hard, she had a place to come home to. The first time the lights went out, Tasha thought it was a neighborhood outage. She checked her phone for alerts, peeked through the blinds. But the street lamps glowed steadily, and lights were on in the neighboring units. Then her stomach sank. She hadn't paid the electricity bill. She'd meant to. It was on the list, wedged somewhere between diapers, rent, and bus fare. But one shift had been cut short, and Jaden needed new shoes, and the envelope had stayed sealed. Now, the fridge was dead silent. The apartment sat in thickening darkness. Jaden looked up at her from the floor, blinking in confusion. Mommy, Tasha forced a smile. We're having a flashlight night, baby. Like camping. She pulled out the cheap plastic lantern she'd found at the dollar store and turned it on, its dull yellow beam dancing along the walls. Jaden giggled, momentarily delighted. Tasha held him close, heart pounding. This wasn't just inconvenience. This was survival, unraveling. She called the utility company the next morning from work, voice low and steady. They told her the balance, $94.12. Not massive, but huge when every dollar already had a name. She paid $50 from what she had left in her account, promising to pay the rest in 2 weeks. The lights came back on that evening. She nearly cried when the fridge hummed again. Jaden pointed and clapped. Back. Tasha laughed, but it was hollow. She knew it would happen again. Not because she was irresponsible, but because the system wasn't built to let people breathe. Work became heavier. Elena had hired 2 new people, and shifts were tighter. Tasha's hours were cut again. She stood in the break room staring at the new schedule, her name missing from 2 days she usually worked. Her stomach flipped. Elena walked in behind her, arms crossed. I know, she said. We're juggling everyone right now. I'll try to make it up next week. Tasha nodded, trying not to panic. Thanks. She punched out and left, thoughts racing. She couldn't afford next week. She needed now. She looked up a local food pantry that evening. It was 2 bus rides away, and the line snaked around the block when she arrived. Jaden sat in his stroller, restless and bored. Tasha swayed back and forth to soothe him while chatting with the woman behind her, a laid-off hotel cleaner with 4 kids. You alone? The woman asked gently. Tasha nodded. You're strong, sis. This city don't make it easy. When they finally got in, the pantry worker handed her a box with cereal, rice, peanut butter, and a few cans of vegetables. Enough for 5 or 6 meals if she stretched it right. She whispered thank you. Again and again, she found herself whispering thanks for things no one should have to beg for. That weekend, Jaden developed a cough. It wasn't terrible, but it lingered. His nose ran constantly, and he became clingier, fussier. She stayed home from work again. Elena was kind but firm on the phone. You're reliable, Tasha, but we have to cover the shifts. If this keeps up, Tasha knew what came next. She didn't wait to hear it. She hung up, head pounding. Jaden sniffled on her shoulder. She rocked him, counting the seconds between breaths. Monday morning, she called Simone. I think I need help, she said simply. Simone didn't ask questions. She gave her the number for a crisis stabilization fund and coached her through the application. 2 days later, Tasha received a prepaid card for $200 in emergency assistance. It wasn't a fix, but it was food. It was a partial electric bill. It was bus fare and diapers. She breathed easier that night. And when she looked at Jaden sleeping, knees tucked under him, mouth open, she felt something stir. A flicker of fight. She wasn't done yet. Later that week, she found an old notebook at a secondhand store for 50 cents. Hardcover, worn edges, blank pages. She started writing again, not dreams this time, but plans. A real budget. A list of affordable preschools. Phone numbers for local clinics. A resume draft. Goals for the next 6 months. Even when Jaden tugged on her arm or the microwave beeped, she returned to the notebook, building her roadmap with shaky but determined hands. She couldn't change the system overnight, but she could take each step with purpose. And that mattered. Weeks passed, folding into each other like worn-out pages. The new apartment felt less like a dream and more like a fragile promise she had to protect. Every morning, Tasha woke before dawn, Jaden still asleep beside her, and she prepared for another day in the city that never stopped moving, no matter how heavy her heart felt. On a gray Thursday, the chill of early fall creeping into the air, Tasha walked Jaden to the daycare. She kissed his soft curls and whispered, "Be good for Miss Clara, okay?" He nodded, his big brown eyes looking up at her with trust and innocence. That trust was a fragile thing, something she clung to every day, fragile as glass. Work was grinding harder now. The extra shifts Elena promised were fewer than she hoped. Some days, Tasha felt like she was running in place. One afternoon, as she stacked trays in the fast food kitchen, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Hey, heard about the eviction. You okay?" Tasha's heart jumped. How did they know? She stared at the screen, fingers trembling. It was from Jerome, a neighbor from the shelter. She had met him briefly, but never exchanged numbers. She typed back, hesitating before pressing send. Not great. Trying to keep it together. The reply came quickly. "If you need anything, I'm here. We're all in this together." Tasha blinked away tears. For once, someone saw her struggle without judgment. That evening, Jerome knocked softly on her door, carrying a brown paper bag. "I thought you might need some groceries," he said, voice kind but quiet. Tasha invited him in. They talked about the shelter, the hard days, the dreams they held close. Jaden crawled to Jerome's feet, grabbing at his shoelaces. In that cramped, worn apartment, a small flicker of hope sparked. But hope didn't erase reality. Bills piled up. Her last paycheck was still a week away. Jaden's cough lingered, and the doctor's visits cost more than she had. The fear of losing this apartment, of ending back on the streets, tightened around her like a noose. One night, Tasha lay awake, counting every dollar and every breath Jaden took. She whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "We'll be okay. We have to be." Outside, the city's hum pulsed through the thin walls, a reminder that life didn't pause for hardship. Yet in the darkness, she found strength. Her notebook, now filled with plans and phone numbers, became her lifeline. She called a local charity that offered job training. She scheduled an appointment with a social worker for childcare support. Step by step, inch by inch, she fought for stability. And sometimes, that meant asking for help. Like the night Jerome helped her fix the broken heater. Or the morning when Clara from daycare stayed late because Tasha's bus was delayed. These small acts built a fragile web of support, a safety net woven from kindness and community. Tasha knew the road ahead was long and uncertain. But as she tucked Jaden into bed and kissed his forehead, she felt something new, quiet determination. A promise that no matter how dark the night, she would keep walking toward the light. The days grew shorter, the chill in the air sharper. The city had slipped fully into autumn, and with it came a heaviness that settled deep in Tasha's bones. The fragile stability she had fought so hard to build was cracking. It started with the landlord's calls, curt, impatient, reminders that rent was still late. Each time, Tasha's throat tightened, her heart pounding as she promised, "I'll have it next week." But next week was always a hope stretched thin, slipping through her fingers like cold smoke. She tried every angle. Extra shifts at work, odd jobs cleaning apartments, even selling a few things she'd managed to keep. A jacket, a few books Jaden liked. But it never seemed to add up. One evening, after putting Jaden to bed, Tasha sat alone in the dim glow of the street lamp outside her building. The city moved around her, the distant wail of sirens, laughter spilling from a nearby bar, the clatter of heels on pavement. But she felt frozen, disconnected. Her phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "We need to talk about your hours." Her stomach dropped. She knew what it meant. The next day at work, Elena was waiting. Her face was tight but soft, like she hated being the bearer of bad news. "Tasha," she said quietly, "I'm sorry, but we have to let you go. The restaurant is cutting back, and we just can't keep you on." Tasha nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She thanked Elena, gathering her things with shaking hands. The walk home was brutal, every step heavier than the last. Back in the apartment, Jaden tugged at her sleeve, sensing the weight she carried. She sank to the floor, pulling him close. Tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. The silence between them was loud. The eviction notice still hung on the door, faded but haunting. She called the housing assistance hotline, voice cracking as she explained her situation. The wait lists were long. The shelters full. There was nowhere to go. The nights grew colder. The heater, long broken, was replaced with layers of blankets and hope. Tasha's friends from the shelter rallied around her. Jerome dropped off food. Clara offered to watch Jaden during her shifts, and Simone checked in every few days with advice and comfort. But even surrounded by care, Tasha felt isolated, caught in a system that seemed designed to swallow her whole. One evening, Jaden asked, "Mommy, why do we have to sleep here?" They were in a cramped church basement, one of the emergency shelters. She forced a smile. "Because sometimes, baby, we have to be brave. And I'm so proud of you." He nodded, eyes wide. In the quiet moments, Tasha wrote furiously in her notebook, plans, dreams, everything she hoped for her son. She imagined a future with a home that was theirs, a life where rent wasn't a constant fear. Her hands shook as she wrote, but her resolve hardened. She refused to give up. The next morning, as dawn broke over the city skyline, Tasha packed their meager belongings. Jaden held her hand tightly as they stepped out into the uncertain light. Together, they faced the unknown, with tired feet but unbroken spirit. The cold morning air bit into Tasha's skin as she pushed the stroller down the cracked sidewalk. Jaden was bundled tightly, eyes wide as the city stirred to life around them. The endless gray buildings loomed overhead, but today, Tasha looked at them differently, not as walls closing in, but as silent witnesses to her fight. They arrived at the community center before it opened. The worn sign above the door read, "Hope and Help Shelter." She clutched the worn handle of the stroller and took a deep breath. Inside, the volunteers greeted them with warm smiles. It wasn't home, but it was a refuge. Jaden's laughter echoed in the playroom as he chased a bright red ball, momentarily free from worry. Tasha watched him, a small spark of peace stirring inside. Days turned into weeks. With the shelter's support, she enrolled in a job training program focused on healthcare. The instructors were patient, the work hard, but each lesson was a step toward something better. Simone visited often, bringing groceries and words of encouragement. Jerome's friendship was a steady anchor, someone who reminded her she wasn't invisible. Still, nights were the hardest. When Jaden slept, Tasha sometimes broke down, exhaustion and fear flooding through her. But she wiped her tears, opened her notebook, and kept writing. A budget, a timeline, phone numbers, all pieces of the puzzle she was determined to solve. One afternoon, a social worker called with news. A subsidized apartment was available. The unit was small, but safe. The rent was affordable. Tasha's hands trembled as she signed the papers. That night, for the first time in months, she laid Jaden down in a bed of their own. The city lights shimmered through the window. Jaden's breathing was calm, steady. Tasha sat quietly beside him, heart full. The road ahead would be long and full of challenges, but they had taken a step forward. Together, as dawn broke, Tasha looked out at the waking city. She whispered a promise, to herself, to Jaden, to the life they would build. A promise of hope, resilience, and endless fight. Because sometimes, the greatest strength comes from holding on when everything else tries to let go.